We're now 2 years on from our cycle lows. So if Bitcoin's 4-year cycle is still in play, then we're about halfway through this cycle. If that's the case, let's see how the next 2 years could look for BTC. Today we're going to be looking at Bitcoin's 4-year cycle, and where better to start than a TradingView chart of BTC. So 2 years ago to the day, as you're seeing this, wasn't exactly the bottom of Bitcoin's bear cycle from our previous cycle, but that was kind of the day in which everything started falling apart, really. We just zoom in here on November the 7th, 2022. This is when rumors of FTX's insolvency really started circulating. Binance began offloading some of their assets. So really, this kind of kickstarted this big collapse capitulation event, which saw Bitcoin drop from what everyone had hoped, the bottom of the bear cycle, to be at around $20,000 to around $15,000, which, if you were around at the time, wasn't the most fun time to be around. If we just go here, it wasn't just FTX that collapsed at that point. It was BlockFi, 3AC, which was an asset management investment firm, Voyager Digital, Celsius, a lending platform as well. And if we just go onto the chart here, we can see the catastrophic price action that actually led up to these. So if we just go to FTT, for example, and I'll just go on the monthly chart here, we can see that we had, if I turn off logarithmic, a pretty diabolical period of price action around this time, where price pretty much in a few days dropped about 100%. So that was FTT related to the FTX collapse. We had Luna as well, which was slightly earlier, but again, during that bear cycle, just everything felt pretty poor. We saw Luna drop 90% in a month, and that was a consequence of its stablecoin Terra Luna breaking as well, which I forget the ticker. I think it was USTC. So USTC, USDT. And if we go onto the Bybit chart here, we can see again, this had a 98% drop in pretty much no time at all as the peg on that stable coin broke. So it was a very painful time to be around in Bitcoin. But 2 years on from then, Bitcoin's price has pretty much 5x'd from those lows. So of course, it happens every single cycle. Everyone thinks that things going to go to zero, Bitcoin's broken, it's died, it's gone forever. And that typically happens every single time. Really, this pattern that we're seeing playing out this cycle is incredibly similar to what we've seen in previous cycles. What we can do is just draw on something like a array on price action here and here. I think it was the previous candle actually here, and in our previous cycle there. And what we can see is if we just measure the time it took from lows to break above these, we can see it was 26 months. In this cycle, it was 24 months. In our current cycle, if you exclude our break above it that we had back in March, which was only a temporary break above our previous all-time high before we consolidated beneath that, we can see again right now we're at 24, so right in that range where we'd be expected to break above our previous all-time high. And if we just look on why the 4-year basis exists, just to show it off from low to low, we can see 47 bars in the previous cycle, and then from that low to our current low, 47 bars again. So pretty much bang on 2 years. Now, this is driven very much by the Bitcoin halving event, which we can see outlined here by the stock to flow, which is when the inflation rate of Bitcoin decreases by 50%. So in our most recent halving, the block reward dropped from 6.25 BTC about every 10 minutes as a reward to the miners to 3.125 BTC. Now, even if demand stays constant, the supply decreasing, basic supply and demand economics, is going to result in price increasing. So even if you don't believe in the stock to flow model potential valuations giving a $450,000 Bitcoin post halving in this cycle, ultimately this is having an influence on the price action. And what we can see is even in previous cycles, such as the 2016-2017 cycle, we actually had a variance lower than what we're having now. So we were more undersold compared to the stock to flow model valuation, the fair model valuation, than we are today. So even if we are slightly lagging behind this, this is still, pretty familiar territory. So of course there is a chance that Bitcoin can catch up and fulfill its 450k stock to flow destiny. But along with that, we also see a lot of correlation with the global M2 typical money liquidity cycle, We can see back here that this bottomed out on a year-on-year basis in 2015, which pretty much aligned with that bottom of the Bitcoin bear cycle. Then again in 2018, and our most recent one, which was very late 2022. So pretty much bang on 4 years, Bitcoin's price bottoms out. So this 4-year cycle is pretty predictable, really. We have about a year-long bear cycle. We have about a year of pretty sideways, choppy consolidation reprice action. We have a year or so of massive exponential gains, and then we just see it repeat every single time. So what we can see is, if we just zoom out here, what this would look like on Bitcoin in terms of this cycle is, again, if we just look at low to high in each cycle, we can see in this instance it was 35 bars. In this instance, it was 35 bars again. So if we assume something similar to happen this cycle, from our cycle lows, 35 bars would set us to October 2025. So just under a year from now as we're watching this. And then again, if we just look at how long it takes for Bitcoin to reach these lows, 12 months, and then again, 12 months. So after that, we'd see Bitcoin probably have a year-long bear cycle to around October 2026. So without giving any price predictions, just kind of looking at a rough time frame basis, we could see Bitcoin just run up again for the next year before coming down and then starting the 4-year cycle all over again. And this seems to be the case not only in price action and time cycle, but also in just general investor habits and behavior. We can see by looking at something like the net unrealized profit and loss, or the NUPL ratio, we can almost quantify the emotions investors are likely experiencing at a given time. And we can see this is derived from the realized price, or realized CAP, which is the average accumulation or cost basis for BTC on the network. That when a majority of investors are at a loss, they're feeling capitulation. And again, this is very cyclical on a 4-year cycle basis, happening here in 2015, before happening in 2018, 2019, and then again in 2022. So it's very predictable, not just in price action, but again, how investors are feeling their emotions at any given time. Driven by the stock to flow, driven by global liquidity, driven by price, all of it's interconnected, basically just impacting the supply and demand economics of Bitcoin. And as we're seeing a lot of correlation between this cycle and previous cycles in terms of where we are in the cycle, how Bitcoin's price has reacted, there's absolutely no reason to believe that this 4-year cycle doesn't happen again in our current bull cycle. And as we bottomed out in the next bear market, which might be in Q4 2026, we can assess, do a similar analysis, and once again, Bitcoin may be playing out a new 4-year cycle, seeing us top out somewhere in Q4 2029. Also, if you haven't already, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to ensure you're receiving all of our content as soon as it's released. And make sure to check out all the resources we've discussed today, as well as the many more that are all available on bitcoinmagazinepro.com, your #1 source for Bitcoin analysis. So just to summarize, only 2 years ago, we were witnessing major crypto companies failing in what seemed like the end of days for Bitcoin as price collapsed, as we could see from the price action chart before. Hopefully, we weren't too impacted by those big collapsing events that we saw a few years ago. But hopefully you survived. If you're still watching this, you're still here today. And since then, we've seen, as we always see in Bitcoin, price rally as confidence comes back in. And since that low, we've seen about a 5x in the Bitcoin price action, with still plenty of room to go to the upside. And once again, the 4-year cycle of Bitcoin seems to be playing out, driven in part by the halving event, as well as the investor behavior and on-chain analytics we see. And along with that, the global liquidity cycle acting again on about a 4-year cycle as well, which is definitely influencing Bitcoin's supply and demand economics. And if this continues, which all indications are looking that it's likely to be, we'll see Bitcoin topping out in Q4 2025 before a year-long bear cycle in 2026. Now, one thing to acknowledge is at some point this 4-year cycle is going to break. It's not going to last forever, probably due to Bitcoin's correlation with traditional markets. If we see a long drawn out recession in equities or gold, for example, or both at the same time, Bitcoin is likely going to struggle. But ultimately, the stocks flow model is going to continue to have influence. Global liquidity is always going to have some influence. And we can check this by using on-chain data to just see in real time if people are buying or selling, and quantifying that sentiment, and just using this data-driven analytical approach to cut through the noise and react to what the data is presenting to us. If you like this video, then please visit bitcoinmagazinepro.com, where our analytics help you to cut through the noise to make informed, data-driven decisions about Bitcoin. With over 150 live chats, personalized indicator alerts, in-depth crypto industry reports, API access, and more, all for a fraction of the standard industry price. And let me know what your thoughts are on Bitcoin continuing to follow the 4-year cycle in this cycle. Do you think it's likely? Do you think we far extend that Q4 2025 base that everyone's kind of looking towards for a Bitcoin bull cycle peak? Do you think we're going to see a super cycle and see Bitcoin hit exponential gains for years to come? Or do you think that the 4-year cycle theory is dead and we're going to maybe see Bitcoin top out considerably earlier than that, or have a long extending bear cycle? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comments below and on social media. I look forward to reading and replying to them. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.